Ladies and gentlemen, I would like John Robertson, the head of the North Asian Affairs section of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, to propose the loyal toast.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite you to stand and join me in a toast to the Emperor of Japan. And gentlemen, the Emperor. And to respond, the toast to Her Majesty the Queen of Australia to be proposed by Mr. Perot.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I propose a toast to Her Majesty the Queen of Australia, to the Queen.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have many things to celebrate in the history of our societies, but one of them is an honour about to be conveyed, which in its own way honours us all, because it's a recognition of the work done for the Australia-Japan Societies in Australia by Mr. Alex McCarter, MBE. You will have read that very recently His Imperial Majesty conferred upon Mr. McCarter a very distinguished honour, the Japanese Order of the Sacred Treasure, gold raised with neck ribbon. It is to be presented this evening, and for that purpose I would invite His Excellency the Ambassador of Japan, Mr. Sato, and Mr. McCarter to join me at the rostrum.
Where is it?
Well, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to here to present the decoration which the Emperor has conferred upon Mr. MacArthur. On April 29th this year, His Majesty the Emperor of Japan has conferred upon Mr. Alex MacArthur the Order of Sacred Treasure, gold raised with neck ribbon, for his long-term and outstanding contributions to the promotion of Australian friendship. I don't think Mr. MacArthur needs any introduction. He is the co-founder of the Australian-Japan Society in Queensland, and ever since, for just about a quarter of a century, he has been the chief promoter of the friendship between Queensland and Japan, but beyond that, between Australia and Japan. To those who know that he has participated in the campaign against Japanese military and Japanese army in Papua New Guinea, and also to those who know that he has been a member of occupation army in Japan. This is doubly congratulating things, and from our point of view, it's his contribution after World War II to the cause of the friendship between our two countries is far more than praiseworthy. And therefore, I can say that Mr. MacArthur is a personification of the long history of our two countries' relations. So it's a more than honor, it's a personal pleasure and indeed an emotional moment for myself to pass on to the secretary. I read the protocol in Japanese, please. 日本国天皇はオーストラリア国民アレックス・ジョセフ・マッカーサーを勲三等に女子追放賞を贈与する平成9年4月29日皇居において授与をさせる平成9年4月29日内閣総理大臣橋本龍太郎。And with all Australians, there is an official translation. So let me read the English translation of this protocol. The order of the Sacred Treasure, gold raised with knit ribbon, is hereby conferred upon Alex Joseph MacArthur, citizens of the Commonwealth of Australia, by His Majesty the Emperor of Japan. In witness thereof, the seal of state has been affixed to these presents at the Imperial Palace. This day, the 29th of the 4th of the 9th year of Heisei 1997. Signed by Ryutaro Hashimoto, the Prime Minister of Japan.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know whether the award carries with it an appropriate title. Would you please welcome Mr. Alex MacArthur.
I thought for one moment that David Russell was going to do something else. Thank you, President David. Your Excellency, the Ambassador, Consul General Sakano, our distinguished former Ambassador to Australia and the United Nations and President James Baroda, Mr. Kenneth Deary, Past President Chairman of Mitsui, and undoubtedly one of Australia Japan's most outstanding sons of industry. The founder of Mitsui Education in Australia, in Sydney, decorated by the Australian government, and a great friend of mine for some 40 years. Mr. Furusawa. Mr. Furusawa is an outstanding 87-year-old link between Kobe and Brisbane and Australia, decorated by the Australian government for her endeavours, which are too numerous to remember to elaborate on. A grand lady and a real diplomat. Could you stand, please? From the audience also, I'd like to take the opportunity to recognise some people, and I'd like to recognise Dr. Fuji Chamberlain for her assistance, her wise counsel, her academic guidance in matters Japanese, her energy and her endless and tireless arrangement for the AJS in Queensland and Australia. She is an AJS Queensland treasure. Dr. Chamberlain. Next, I'd like to mention another special name here. It's Reverend Father Timothy Norris. Father Norris is head of St Kevin's Catholic Church at Chiba. I'm not of that faith, but I can assure you that Father Norris came to the attention of the AJS some 2 years ago. He has a total number of 350 children from grades 1 to 7, all studying Japanese. I believe this to be a record. For those who have not met or will meet Father Norris, you'll note that he is broad in his Irish tongue, and when mixed with Japanese, it's a great combination. Father Norris, with you. I'd also like to recognise my co-director, Mr Hugh James, President and CEO of Epic Energy. Under his direction, the company have been financially supportive and have helped the AJS considerably. They have funded a number of our undertakings for the AJS, and I should add that General James, who is at the same table, a distinguished soldier, an Army General, President of the RSL, is no relation to Mr James, but at the same table. Thank you. I could also go on to mention ad infinitum a number of other people, but I must also mention Oliver, who's been a great comfort to me, and in the last couple of years she's had a number of clinical problems, but other than that she has been great in her tolerance and understanding while I've been working in matters related to the AJS. Finally, let us go away from this conference, and I hope with peace and goodwill, and that when we return for the next conference in some 2 years' time, that it will be more successful than the one we're having tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, formalities will resume after the entree. To read a message from the Prime Minister of Japan.
I know I'm the most hard-working person at the moment. To those who are at the dinner at the Parliament building to hear what the way that Mr. Hashimoto spoke, you will tell that how I'm going to misrepresent him. He was very relaxed, and his manner of speaking was so popular after that. So here, I just want to read this. This is a message from Prime Minister Hashimoto to the 1997 conference of the Australian Japan Society. It is my great pleasure to send a message to the 1997 conference of the Australian Japan Society of Australia. I am particularly happy to do so with a vivid memory of the warm welcome my wife and I received in Canberra from the Prime Minister and Mrs. Howard. There is no doubt that relations between Australia and Japan have never been better and closer than now. Australia is now an indispensable partner to Japan in our efforts to ensure peace and prosperity in the Asia-Pacific region, as well as globally. This will be even more true in the coming century. I visited Australia for the first time in 1969. I have since visited this country several times and regard myself as a close friend of Australia. I am therefore convinced of the importance of the Japan-Australian relations. It is with these in mind that I proposed to Prime Minister Howard when I visited Canberra last April to make it a guiding principle for the two prime ministers of the two countries to meet once a year so as to deepen our dialogue. I was very pleased to find that Prime Minister Howard thought likewise.
We have also agreed to hold the next meeting of the Australia-Japan Ministerial Committee in Tokyo on the 1st of August this year. Needless to say, it is essential in order to strengthen further our relations to promote a broad range of exchanges and cooperation at many levels between the peoples and the communities of the two countries. I therefore would like to take this opportunity to express a deep sense of respect and appreciation, which I have long since held to the members of the Australian-Japan Society in Australia and the Japan-Australia Societies in Japan for the leadership they have been taking in strengthening ties of friendship between our two countries. Our two countries commemorate this year the 40th anniversary of the conclusion of the Agreement on Commerce between Japan and the Commonwealth of Australia. This treaty marked the beginning of the post-World War II trade and economic relations between our two countries. The relations to date are clearly successful and mutually beneficial. We also commemorated last year the 20th anniversary of the signing of the Australia-Japan Basic Treaty of Friendship and Cooperation. This treaty provided a basis for the construction of friendly and cooperative relations between the two countries. The scope of cooperation between the two countries has indeed become very broad and it is still expanding. The Japanese government, for its part, celebrated last year the centenary of the establishment of the first consulate of Japan in Townsville. It is so reassuring to know that the house in which the first Japanese consul lived is still standing on Castle Hill overlooking the town. This year we celebrate the centenary of the opening of the consulate in Sydney. As you are aware, the Australian and Japanese governments have agreed to cooperate to organize various programs in our two countries to celebrate these friendship anniversaries for the purpose of reflecting upon these important landmarks in our history and looking ahead to find ways to strengthen further the friendship and cooperation between our two peoples for the next century. This conference is indeed in this context one of the most important commemorative events which take place in Australia this year, and it will no doubt make itself the most memorable one. This meeting will give to its participants, both Australian and Japanese, many precious opportunities to think together about our relations to date and try to find together ways to expand exchanges between the two peoples and to deepen further their mutual understanding. I trust that this conference will be of great significance for the future development of friendly and cooperative relations. I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all of you for your efforts to organize and participate in this important meeting, and I wish you all every success.
And to read the message from the Prime Minister of Australia, Mr. Ron Dalrymple.
Ladies and gentlemen, the following message from Prime Minister John Howard, Prime Minister of Australia, to our conference. I am pleased to welcome participants in the third National Conference of Australia-Japan Societies. The relationship with Japan is of fundamental and long-standing importance to Australia. It has grown into a remarkable partnership spanning many areas of activity and involving many ordinary Australians and Japanese. In economic terms, no country is more important to Australia than Japan. Japan has been Australia's largest trading partner for 30 years. It is our most important export market and third largest source of foreign investment. Our two economies are highly complementary, as demonstrated by our very strong business ties. Australia and Japan are cooperating increasingly closely to promote stability and prosperity in the Asia-Pacific region through our support for trade and investment liberalisation in APEC and regional cooperation generally. We strongly support each other's active participation in world and regional affairs. Just as impressive as our economic and political ties are the bonds of friendship between our two peoples through tourism, education, culture and sport. These links help to build a mutual appreciation of our two cultures and an understanding of a shared destiny in this part of the world. The various Australia-Japan societies have long played an important role in expanding and building upon these close ties. Those societies draw together experience and expertise from all parts of the community and help to harness the efforts of individuals and groups so that they have best effect. On behalf of the Australian Government, I extend my best wishes to the Australia-Japan societies and hope the conference is a great success. That's Mr. Howard's message.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the first principles of the organisation of any organisation such as the Australia-Japan Society, as well espoused by treasurers, is never let the President get near the chequebook. However, we have prevailed upon our treasurer to provide us some information today about our conference, and it appears that amongst the other problems that he has to deal with, a loss from this conference will not be one. Indeed, there is a surplus, and one of the matters to which we've been giving attention in recent times is what might be done with it that will make a permanent memorial of our efforts this weekend. Those of you who are in Australia, and perhaps some of you from Japan, would be familiar with a television program called Faulty Towers. And in particular, one episode called The Germans, in which John Cleese goes absolutely mad with the idea, don't mention the war, as a team of German tourists are about to visit. But there is a way in which one can mention the war in a positive and productive way. It's an example, I think, exemplified by Alex MacArthur in his experiences of life, which were referred to earlier. There is in Kaura a cemetery in which not only those Japanese prisoners who died in the incident that's known in Australia as the Kaura breakout are buried, but also more recently other Japanese who died and are buried during the war have been removed to. And there's a project that's being organised by the Kaura local authority to build a memorial grove for those Japanese who are buried on Australian soil. And it seemed to us that it would be appropriate to use part of the proceeds of this conference to recall something of the charity and generosity that was shown to Australians who died on another great battlefield by Kemal Atatürk in Turkey. The memorial to the Australian soldiers who died at Gallipoli, commissioned by Kemal Atatürk, says amongst other things this: those heroes that shed their blood and lost their lives, you are now lying in the soil of a friendly country. Therefore rest in peace. There is no difference between the Johnnies and the Magnets to us where they lie side by side here in this country of ours. You, the mothers, who sent their sons from faraway countries, wipe away your tears. Your sons are now lying in our bosom and are at peace. After having lost their lives on this land, they have become our sons as well. It seems to us that the project of the Kaura local authority is one well deserving of support. It is something that those of you from Japan will know that you have contributed to making a further memorial of Japan in Australia. Thank you. For those of you who haven't heard him, let me tell you it's not something you will want to miss, so if you have in mind a comfort stop, it can be wise to plan it now. I don't quite know how that translates into Japanese, but I'm sure there are enough people here who will know. In our conference, I discovered, amongst other things, when I went to Tokyo, that Mr. Ejiri's name was spoken in hushed terms because he was really the industrialist in Japan. When one mentioned Mr. Kuroda, people looked at you and said, the ambassador. And now we have the third of our Japanese guests, who is known, and rightly so, as the interpreter. And perhaps in many ways, his job is the most difficult of all, because he has to bridge the interface between the two cultures. An interface that can terribly easily go wrong simply because somebody puts the wrong nuance on a term or reverses something. Those of you who have been trying our Australian sake this evening, and I hope at least all of our Japanese guests have, will have noted that it's called Goshu. And of course, if you get the interpretation wrong and you reverse it, Shugo. That, of course, is what happens when you have too much of it. Again, if you get associations wrong, you can make terrible mistakes. The Chinese say that their idea of heaven is to have a Japanese wife, an American salary, a British house, and a Chinese cook. How different does it sound if you end up with a Japanese house, an American wife, a Chinese salary, and a British cook? But our guest has been on the edge of history. He's interpreted, I think, for almost every major English-speaking leader who's visited Japan. Reagan, Bush, the Queen, Rajiv Gandhi, the list goes on. He's head of Simul International, the leading firm of interpreters in Japan. But more importantly, who of us would have wished the responsibility of interpreting the moon wall? It was Muramatsu-san who had to sit on NHK wondering what they would say and then interpret a small step for a man, a giant leap for all mankind, and did it without standing aplomb. Ladies and gentlemen, we're very honoured that Muramatsu-san has joined us. I ask you to welcome.
microphone has been appropriately lowered to match my stature. Thank you, Mr. Russell, for expanding on my resume. I appreciate it. Ambassador Sato, Ambassador Kuroda, and our friend Ambassador Dalrymple, and many other people I have had the pleasure of knowing for close to 3 decades. And Lynn Buckley, others, particularly to Alex MacArthur, my sincerest congratulations to you. His family name MacArthur, of course, is very familiar. But that was, of course, long time ago. Douglas MacArthur, different spelling. And this Alex is MC Alex. General Douglas is MAC, Dr. MacArthur. The subtle nuance escapes the Japanese most of the time. But I think what our world, and particularly what Japan and Australia need, is more people like Alex's rather than Douglas's. In this morning session, Ambassador Dalrymple almost stole thunder from my talk this evening when he told that frog or toad joke. Those of you who missed, please go and check with him again. Or if you come to see me, I'll reproduce it. And that story reminded me that, yes, I had the pleasure of in traveling for your conferences, ACMJ, ministerial meetings, press conferences, and some of the delicate assignments. But what Ambassador Dalrymple does not remember is when he told that toad joke, he was surprised at the reaction, laughter from the Japanese side. He doesn't know I cheated a little bit. He said, this is meant to be a joke. No, I'm not quite that. I'm talking about cultural idiosyncrasies. If you think the word idiosyncrasy is a big word, I use it colloquially. Everybody has his or her set habits. That seems strange, curious, or sometimes irksome from other people's point of view. The Japanese, for example, generally are reticent. When my talk is finished, please give me a cue when it comes to 2 minutes allotted time. The first question will come from an Australian and not from a Japanese. We generally wait for somebody else to ask the question. Why should I be the first? It's typical Japanese mindset. We are also collective people. We are clannish and collective decision makers, and our decisions are always very slow. In marked contrast to us, Australians are very relaxed people, and many of you have already found that out. The word is laid back, to be laid back. In other words, not taking things too seriously to some extent. But Australians are always able to laugh at themselves and at others. And in our language, our own ambiguity is quite clear. When the Japanese say, hi, 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 it does not mean yes in your language. It simply means, I hear you, I heard you. So don't take yes for an answer. And with the equal enthusiasm, I would like to laugh at the Aussie custom of saying, no problem, when there are problems. But there is a current European joke in very popular circulation in European countries. I have several versions of them sent to me by my friends there. Who is the perfect European, or what is the perfect European? It goes like the following, and there are not in any particular significant order. The perfect European should be as good a chef as British, as humorous as a German, generous as a Dutchman, as sober as the Irish, as a gentle driver as the French, as disciplined as the Italian, and by the time it goes down to as famous as Luxembourger, as available as Belgian, as discreet as Dutch, you are really scratching the bottom. But when I mention this, I think I'm being unfair to many, particularly last or penultimate nationalities, so I quickly make fun of ourselves. If you were to define what is the perfect world citizen, you have to add Australian and maybe Japanese. I've been thinking about Australian, probably as intense as Australian, or what's the best word, the opposite of laid back. And as quick decision-making and individual as Japanese. But then I like to be even-handed in this kind of treatment. Indians are famous for saying no problem, no problem, no problem. But I understand no problem. And Turks, whom I happen to be fairly familiar with, I'm a student of Turkish history and therefore your encounters at Anzac. A few years ago I visited Gallipoli myself. Turks, if a tourist, someone like me, would stop and ask for some famous landmark, he may not know, but he never says, I'm sorry, I don't know. And he would take us, lead us, and I notice he's asking someone else, how do we go? And pretty soon the crowd is 4 or 5 people chatting and smiling at me and taking me to nowhere. That is apparently Turkish custom, never to say no to travelers or strangers. That's beautiful custom. Japanese are formalistic people, as I said, and collective thinkers. Australians are good at improvising. These are some of your virtues. When a joke is only half told, classic story goes that a Frenchman would laugh in the middle of it. Don't let you finish your punchline. The Englishman will wait until the end of the joke. Somebody say he has to. The German will philosophize all night and laugh next morning. The American, or you affectionately call him Yank, tells you it's an old joke. Besides, my punchline is better. I didn't do that to you, Mr. Russell. And next time you see a Japanese smiling when you tell him a joke, he may be trying to memorize it to take it to his conference room tomorrow to decide whether he wants or not. Actually, I'm practicing this art called bantering. Seemingly, I'm making fun of Aussies, but I'm also allowing for some of you to laugh at the Japanese traits or idiosyncrasies. There is this phenomenon between Australia and New Zealand which fascinates me. This sort of rivalry, sibling rivalry, complexes one way or another, which expresses itself in throwing seemingly, I say seemingly insulting joke at each other. But really, you are enjoying that exercise. This, I think, can be termed bantering. Bantering. Bantering has to be reciprocal. If it's one way, it's bullying and patronizing. And I think you can imagine your old classmates, for example, exchanging seemingly insulting jokes, but enjoying the exchange, sort of reaffirmation of your friendship. I have been reading a lot of these books like latest Penguin Book of Australian Jokes, which is about 5 centimeters thick. And the last year came out its sequel, Penguin Book of More Australian Jokes, about that thick. And then, sure enough, Penguin published a Penguin Book of New Zealand Jokes, which is only half as thick. But as I read through them, many of the jokes are the same jokes, except the names replaced. Instead of Nosy as Kiwi. Because of my long involvement, or membership, I should say, in Australia-Japan Society, of which distinguished Ambassador Kuroda is the chairman, I have to give, if not equal time, give the Kiwis a fair go. And I look at these jokes from the other side of the Tasman Sea. By the way, I coined the new term, which I hope will meet your approval, trans-Tasman bantering, or bantering across the ditch. Last year, I was giving one Saturday afternoon lecture to the members of academia and business about Australia and Japan. And it so happened that exactly a week later, I was giving lecture to people interested in New Zealand about New Zealanders' sense of humor and their bantering with neighbors. When I told my audience, next time we're going to talk about New Zealanders' humor, one Aussie quipped, it must be a very short lecture. In Asia, because of different national characters, we seem to be unable to indulge in or enjoy that sort of bantering with our immediate neighbors. And I feel bad. I feel something must be done over time, like with our neighbors in Korea, neighbors in Chinese. Yes, true, they don't share your cultural background. Maybe jokes mean different things in their dialogue. But I know there are books about Chinese humor, and I know there are books about Korean humor. But all of us, Northeast Asians, seem to reserve that sort of humor or jokes to only very private communication. Over sake in akachojin or pub and your class gatherings. There, yes, we like to share our jokes and humor, but we don't seem to be adept at using it to lubricate or facilitate your public communication, and that seems to be a major difference. You can't talk about Asia as a whole. There are countries like the Philippines, and the Filipinos have great sense of humor. The vice president, who some speculate, with some rumor, might become the next president, succeeding President Ramos. And I'm very careful not to make any political comments, which is outside of my bailiwick. Joseph Etap, I think is his name. Estrada, thank you, Estrada's book. And his jokes are collected into a book called, his nickname is Etap, or Eruption. The name of the book is Eruption, because of his Estrada, Joseph Estrada. He speaks English with some difficulty or an accent. But then he makes fun of himself, which of course increases his charm. Once a newspaper person asked him, Vice President, what is your favorite flower? Estrada replied, my favorite flower is chrysanthemum. The reporter asked, will you spell it? He said, my favorite flower is rose. Because I am less and less involved in the most important international meetings, like Australia-Japan Ministerial Committee meetings or Australia-Japan Business Cooperation Committees, I have more time at my disposal. For example, coming here on my own, under the auspices of JANS, Mr. Kuroda, and I have in fact most of my study team members who started in Sydney, based in Canberra, and Ambassador Sato very graciously hosted the dinner for us. and spent the 2 days discovering Fraser Island and your own. And I think I like it very much, that semi-tropical rainforest and the bushwalk and observing nocturnal animals. And it was a wonderful experience. With my group members, just stand up and be seen. Mr. Sokma there, and who else are there? I don't think young people. Don't be too shy, stand up, quick. And, thank you, Ms. Center. I appreciate your hospitality. And because, as I was saying, I have more time at my disposal, I like to dedicate my time, and I hope to, for the rest of my working career, or even after retirement, I just hope I'll be as robust as Mrs. Furusawa when I reach, or if I reach her age. At least I can emulate Alex MacArthur. Yeah, I hope to. But my passion is really helping everybody, myself included, to cross language and cultural barriers. They seem to be insurmountable, but with a little bit of effort, some compromise. Like Mr. Russell remembered my joke about British idiosyncrasy of blowing, particularly men, blowing their noses right in front of you, straight ahead with a handkerchief from his pocket and pushing it back into while it has not dried yet. We find it rather obnoxious. But that's the difference. So when I see British or Toms, as you say, do that, I smile. I don't try to chide them or criticize them. So when Australians, like taxi drivers who lost his way, anything like that, and say, so no problem, no problem. I just laugh at myself and try to make me more relaxed and accept the differences. One place where Japanese-Australian difference expressed itself quite markedly in the last couple of days at the hotels, not here and not so much here, but in previous hotels. One operator could not help me. Instead of connecting me to an international operator because the outside line was not working, she connected me back to the reception. Reception says, why don't you dial the operator and so on. And when I said, well, the operator gave me to you, so now you will give me back to her. She said, no problem. To me, that is the problem. A Japanese operator will quickly apologize, collectively, for that is the problem. A Japanese operator will quickly apologize, collectively, for all the switchboard team. Here, everyone is individual. We learned years ago that the personal pronoun you, spelled Y-O-U, is both singular and plural, right? You can be just you or just anybody, or including yourself. Japanese have problems with the telephone operators, like at the hotel. We can always say, you gave me wrong number. And whoever that was, it wouldn't argue. You're generous, she would immediately say, gomen nasai on behalf of everybody. But here, it wasn't me. It's a typical. I learned to relax about it. Masakura kindly helped publicize the book that was done under the auspices of Janus. And this is the Encounters with Australia. And this is the book I showed you, some of you remember this morning. It's a collection of winning essays by 250 or 60 members of Japan-Australia societies throughout the country, out of which we had to select 20. We just couldn't turn down 2 more, so it's 22. They are stories, very personal, of Japanese people, young and old, the youngest being a primary school student, pupil, I should say. The oldest, 80-something veteran of the war, who was a captain in the Japanese army, and when we surrendered, he was taken to the POW camp, and the commandant of the camp was an Aussie captain. And because he had some command of English, remember language helps, they struck up friendship. And after nearly 50 years, they discovered each other. And this is one of the moving stories in this book. And this is, by the way, an exercise in opposite direction from another book I helped translate and publish a year before, called Encounters with Japan. This was conceived by Peter Drysdale of ANU and published here by William Collins, Australia. And it's available in a nice paperback. I would very much like you to read it in English. These are Australians' encounters with Japan. Now, there's a marked difference in the tenor. Australians' personal stories, whether thought-provoking or moving, always have an element of humor. The Japanese stories are moving, heartbreaking, with sentimental one, but rarely any trace of humor in the Japanese stories. They may be interesting, but not necessarily humorous. And by the way, last autumn, our autumn being September, October, I wrote another book about humor in leadership, the episodes of the famous people. Modesty prevents me from showing you that book. But what I'm going to do is, Dr. Fujiko Chamberlain, I have about 10 copies of this book and my book. I'm going to donate them to you, and you put them to auction and raise funds for your society or whoever. Probably I have used up my time, and I'll be up to Chairman to accept the question or two.
That was, I'm sure you will all agree, a quite remarkable address, but best still, I think, is the opportunity for us all to ask Muramatsu-san questions. He has said, and I'll prove his prediction true, that the first question will be asked by an Australian, because I'll do it myself. And one wonders where one would start after an address like that. I had thought, having regard to Mrs. Furusawa's thought-provoking contributions yesterday evening, to ask Mr. Muramatsu what he thought about Mrs. Furusawa's dedication of her next 100 years to eradicating sexism amongst Japanese males, and perhaps more significantly her suggestion that Australian males would be regarded as appropriate role models. But I thought instead I would address a question which has been vexing me a little. Australians, of course, can't stand using family names. Japanese, it seems, can't stand using given names. Our best exemplar of Australian-Japan relationships thought he had the problem solved this morning. Alex had had a nameplate developed that simply had Alex on it, so no one could call him Makata-san. We've all moved to Arik-san instead. Given that it doesn't seem to work to use one's own preference, for an Australian to say to a Japanese to use a given name and then rely on a Japanese to use his own preference certainly won't solve the problem. In your experience of international relations, do you have any suggestions as to how we can handle this? Thank you.
Middle names?
When I started working for the Allied with U.S. occupation, there was an Australian regiment in total, or maybe something less than in size. the help wanted ad in newspaper said, common laborers wanted, 200 yen or something, maybe even less, because it was still in 1945, British Commonwealth Occupation Force camp. They used to pronounce the people. And I went there, worked for 2 days, and picked up few English words, like finish, in a hurry. And that was when I heard the famous four-letter word used by Australian diggers without understanding the meaning. But back to the question of first name. When I later, after finishing middle school and 1 year of college in the evening, at 19 I started working for the US Occupation Force Unit. When Americans, GIs and civilians alike, tried to reduce me to Masumi. So, but with my still faulty English, I used to protest. No, please don't call me Masumi. They said, why? I said, only my grandmother calls me Masumi. And that is when she is angry with me. And I'm the eldest son of 5 brothers. I deserve respect or something like that. So they all gave up and they never called me Masumi. And so I compromised. So I initialed the papers MM. So today I get by as MM in most places in the world. My own suggestion is, my own approach is, if some of you, us Japanese people, especially younger people, feel it uncomfortable to address Makasa-san as Alex, why not just call him Makasa-san? To us, adding san to anyone's family name makes it polite enough and friendly enough, really. Please don't try to force yourself or others to use Japanese, or the first name, what you call first name, which to us are really second names. To us, our family name, Furusawa or Muramatsu, is most important. We still belong to family. I think that's right. Right.
Further questions? We'll take another turn. Questions? Sorry? Sorry, yes, sorry. Road sir.
Short one or long? Here are a little bit of German complexity, by the way, because these classical jokes mainly were written from viewpoints of men. But this is about a man who is very, very wishful, ambitious, like many men are anywhere. He goes to his neighborhood shrine, where his guardian spirit is enshrined. I'm careful to use the word God, because to us it's just like your guardian saint. So he offers his little token money, and at midnight every night he goes there to ring the bell, to wake up the God, and offer money and make his wishes, make his prayer. You have to do it for 100 consecutive nights without ever being seen by anyone else. Sure enough, on 100th night, the local deity, his protector, materialized. An old man, could be too much, according to the story, an old man with white beard, white hair, and long white garb, who solemnly told this man, young man, no, I'm sorry, I forgot. I haven't told this story for several months. His wishes were 3 wishes. One, I like long life, like 100 years. I like to break Guinness World Record or something. And 2, I like to be a millionaire, or maybe a billionaire. 3, I like to have mistress, pretty much, or 2. So those are 3 wishes. So finally, when the protector appeared he told this man, young men, those are quite understandable wishes. But if I could grant you those wishes, I wouldn't be sitting here playing the stupid role as your guardian. That's an old story.
One more? Right. Okay, Mr. Muramatsu has offered one more joke, then we finish.
If some of you who have heard this before would promise not to say, I've heard of that one before. This is one of those international comparative jokes, like that, the perfect European. A college professor gives an homework assignment to her students or his students. Write a paper on the elephant, any aspect of the elephant. The story goes on like this. It keeps getting longer and longer. First, the German student writes a very thick tome entitled Philosophical Consideration of the Existence of Elephant. And in very small print, it says it's abstract. And the English student, a long time ago this was circulated, writes a travel brochure about how to enjoy safari and elephant hunting. In the French student writes, of course, a charming essay about the elephants and its sex life. And Canadian student writes a passionate pamphlet entitled On the Difference Between the Canadian Elephants and the United States. The American student writes a prospectus, business-like, how to raise elephants in your backyard for fun and profit. And you can keep on adding whatever nationality you are familiar with. It's good exercise. And when Canadian or and Chinese students simply submitted a recipe. When you work all hard, I will forget my Japanese punchline. 10 years ago, the punchline was the Japanese wrote an essay on comparative analysis of elephant studies abroad. Several years ago, I updated it. Today I would say student wrote about what the elephants think of we Japanese.
Japan, amongst the debates that Japan is engaging in at the moment, is a debate upon whether or not powers should be devolved from central government to prefectural governments. So it's in that guise that I should mention to Mr. Muramatsu the Australian version of that, which I'm sure Mr. Carroll will find amusing. Is the elephant a state or a federal responsibility? I think the answer is it depends whether it's money making or money consuming. Ladies and gentlemen, your response indicates the warmth and the affection with which Mr. Muramatsu's presentation has been received. It's a very great pleasure on your behalf to thank you, and we have already made a presentation to him on your behalf for his contribution. But I'll perhaps just say one thing. There is an Australian version of no problem, no problem, no problem. It's no worries, mate.
We had a, you will appreciate this, we had a group of Japanese educators who came out about 4 years